Hi, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Beth.
Welcome to Dead Reckoning, the podcast where death isn't the end of the story.
Today we are talking about abortion history in San Francisco. This is the first of two parts on this subject because this entire subject consumed me and just needed to be much bigger than than I ever anticipated.
And as we're going to find out, it's a long history, which maybe some people don't realize. This is going to sound super obnoxious right after Beth just talked about the history of abortion. But you guys, if you are enjoying this podcast, we would love it if you could rate and review us. Okay. I know you hear this on every podcast, but it really does help. It helps us get the podcast to people who are interested in it. And it would be, we would be eternally grateful if you would do that, if you're enjoying what you're hearing today. Okay, Beth, do you want to get to your super heavy topic now that I did our episode thirst trap?
Actually, this topic is so heavy that for the first time I'm going to offer a content warning. Like, if
Yes.
anybody's listened to our episodes, you know that, like, pretty much everyone should come with a content warning, but our standards for that are, I think, a little bit higher than the average. So, content warnings about death and abortion. And also, I want to say that nothing in this episode should be taken as medical advice because we're going to be talking about some early methods, and we're in a perilous time, and I don't want to give anybody any ideas necessarily. I mean, the whole theme here is that some unsafe things were being done in this particular period that we're talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll put some links in the notes also if people need information or advice.
Um, so I want to start us off by talking about a particular case that took place in San Francisco in 1910, which is towards the end of the period that I'm going to be talking about in these two episodes. But, one of the reasons I had so many notes for this was that the newspapers of the era really loved reporting on abortion cases, abortion trials. And so they're full of salacious, like, pearl clutching, et cetera, et cetera. But this one was really a remarkable case. So um, I'm going to talk about this woman, Eva Swan. She was 26 years old in 1910. She was born in Nevada and graduated from high school in Paso Robles. So I guess she moved from Nevada to Paso Robles as a kid. Um, she had obtained a teaching certificate and she taught at a number of schools around California, Paso Robles, Monterey, Occidental, and Hopland. But after 5 years in the classroom, she got tired of teaching. I mean, all those kids I can kind of understand. So
Yeah, and there were like not a lot of rules for the kids back then.
her friends described her as tall. Not didn't say how tall, but I assume 5'6" or taller. We're talking about turn of the century women. She weighed about 140 pounds, and this is from the newspaper. She has an abundance of flaxen hair, a
Oh, nice.
complexion peculiarly pale, and eyes that accentuate her fairness by their white gray color. Her face is
Uh,
full and her cheekbones are high.
she was pretty. You sent me a picture of her. She's a beautiful woman.
Yeah, yeah. We might try to include that with the episode. She was really pretty. Her friends said that she was very studious and that she had a quote retiring disposition. So it sounds like she was quiet a lot. There was a quote that said she was at times she was greatly depressed, but again would join a merry
Who among
party at the
us?
theater. Yeah. Her friends say that in conduct she was quiet and dignified. So maybe no bullwhips in the classroom. So she came together with this plan to get out of Paso Robles and out of teaching. She came to San Francisco in January of 1910. She took up housekeeping at a woman named Carrie Ware's house at 2040 Scott Street. sort of Haight-Ashbury area. And while she was doing housekeeping, she was also taking classes in shorthand and typing. She got employment as a stenographer in the offices of Sims and Means. They were agricultural engineers on Market Street. I don't think there are any agricultural engineers left on Market Street today, but
Yeah, not here. Yeah.
um, a work review said that she was not fully proficient in her work, but she was industrious and she gave satisfaction, whatever that means.
Uh, uh, Knowing where this story is probably going, like, I'm going to skip that joke.
She was working at Sims and Means for a couple of months when, in April of 1910, she just disappeared. She left her job. She left her boarding house where she was working. She didn't leave any messages to friends or relatives. That was April 20th, and newspapers began reporting on her disappearance in early May of 1910. And so, what I'm going to talk about next is what came out in trial testimony and newspaper reports. It turns out what happened is that she went to the office of what it said on the door was James T. Grant. But the actual doctor she went to see was a guy named Robert Thompson, who was operating under the name of another doctor to appear more legitimate. So she went to his office 2 days after she disappeared from her job. And we might not have ever found out about this story, but there was a guy named Frank Gordon who had been working for the doctor, Dr. Thompson, um, who went to the police because Thompson failed to give Frank Gordon $18 in back wages. Like, all he had to do was pay $18 in back wages. Um, but then this story might never have come out. So it was believed that a man named Paul Parker, who graduated from Stanford, was Eva's boyfriend. Um, and she got pregnant. So they were having some fun. I hope they were having some fun. Seriously. Um, Parker arranged for this appointment with Dr. Thompson.
Sorry, the boyfriend arranged for the appointment. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like they may have known each other. So I don't know.
Okay, Parker. Yeah. You mean he's sent some other girls there in the past? Mm. Go on, Beth.
We just don't know. Um, Parker testified during the trial that he was only a friend of Eva's and he only went to see her at the doctor's office when she sent for him. And she sent for him because she was sick. But he said that when he went, he could tell what kind of quote unquote hospital it was. Um, Although he didn't elaborate on exactly what he
You
saw
mean
there.
since he made the appointment and knew the doctor? Like, okay, somebody's trying to avoid a conspiracy charge.
Well, we'll get into this,
Okay.
the legal aspects of this a little bit later. But yeah, it's everybody is trying to cover up what's going on. Everybody's trying
Hmm.
to cover up what's going on, because this is a period of time when abortion was not legal.
And probably super looked down on, right?
Yeah.
In addition to, like, it could ruin her life if she
Yeah.
became pregnant without being
Yeah.
married.
Right. Yes. Yes. So she went to Dr. Thompson. The operation was unsuccessful, um, and she died in the doctor's office. Um,
Oh. Mm.
it it only gets worse from there.
Can't wait.
So the doctor took her body to a house that Dr. Grant, the guy he was pretending to be, was renting, at 327 Eureka Street. Placed her in a trunk. First, tried to bury her in the backyard of this house.
Burials were illegal. Sorry.
Yes,
Didn't
as
he
you
get the
rightly point out,
memo?
burials.
Burials have been outlawed in San Francisco. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to joke my way through this because, uh, fuck.
It's awful. It's awful. Uh,
Yes.
Yeah,
And
we all feel awkward. I'm like, "Well, you have to take her to coma." That's not a good joke. That's a
no, it's not a
terrible
good
joke,
joke, and
but,
I
like, I
regret it,
feel
everyone. I'm
terrible
just
about what's happening.
but just like I mean, I know you're gonna talk about the trial, but talk about like you're fucking guilty. You're trying to bury somebody's body in your backyard. Sir, this is not a you didn't try to do like a root canal on this woman and kill her, right?
Yeah. So, again, he put her in a trunk. He tried to bury her in the backyard of this house. I love this detail. It was a full moon the night that he was trying to bury her. Again, this is late April. The neighbors could see into the backyard
Oh
and were watching him. So
my
he
god.
decided instead to bury her in what I think was the laundry room of this house. Poured nitric acid on her face to try to obscure her identity.
Oh, this
Wrapped her
fucker.
wrapped her in oilcloth and a comforter and towels, dug a hole, buried her in the flooring, and then covered it with concrete.
Oh my god, in his
Like, this
laundry
was not
room?
his first time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, for shit. That's a good point, Beth. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Like who just has like a big
So,
old supply of nitric acid or whatever it was sitting around. Ugh.
it still gets worse. Um,
Okay. Perfect. This is
the
Dead Reckoning, everybody.
their their rental of the house continued for about another month, um, and then the house changed hands. Another family, the Kaufmans, moved in a couple months later. Here's the thing: they discovered the trunk, but not the body because she wasn't in the trunk anymore. They said they smelled the smell of decomposition,
Oh.
and because of the smell, they moved out. They didn't report it to anybody, as far as we know.
What did they think it was? Like
I have no
sewage or
idea.
something?
Maybe rats or something.
I mean,
Um,
yeah.
so the house remained vacant until Frank Gordon told the police because Thompson hadn't paid him the back wages.
Oh!
So he went to the police.
This is really stupid criminal shit here, right? Like, also, does Frank Gordon not realize that, like, he's on the hook here too? Like, well, thank God they're stupid, then they get caught.
There are so many people in this story that um, they get acquitted or whatever because they were cooperating with the police at that point. So, September 24th, the San Francisco Call reports that police have gone out to the house and begun excavating the cement in the laundry room.
Ooh.
They found Eva's body 3 feet below the surface. A crowd of neighbors gathered as they dug her up. They were in a dark basement with half a dozen lanterns, and they had to use pickaxes and sledgehammers to break up the concrete and shovels to break up the soil to try to not damage her in the process.
Can you even imagine? I mean, there's no like PPE.
I
There's
know.
no like just it sounds like a horror movie a little
It
bit,
is.
right?
It really
Like it's a
is.
basement with lanterns and yeah.
There was a quote in one of the papers that said the burial was carefully planned. I think in our discussion, it seems like maybe it wasn't that carefully planned, but it does seem like maybe he had done this before.
I mean, he poured concrete over it. So
Yeah.
he knew that that he was trying to make it permanent, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Um, the boyfriend, Parker, ID'd her body at the morgue, um, despite the damage that the acid had done. He said that the body was Eva Swan and he could identify it by her high cheekbones, broad, flat forehead, and this next part is kind of mean, uneven and peculiar teeth.
Yeah, okay, Parker. You sent your fucking girlfriend to some butcher ass incompetent surgeon because you knocked her up. But like, let's see your teeth, asshole.
Yeah. So Thompson and his nurse, who is named Marie Messerschmidt, were arrested after Eva Swan's body was found.
Yeah.
Thompson for murder, and Messerschmitt as a material witness. Um, Another weird detail in this case is that Messerschmitt and Thompson were lovers. And I
Of
read in one
course.
point that he may have promised to marry her at one point and then changed his mind. She wound up testifying against him, so she was not convicted of anything.
Okay. I mean, I think there were a lot of women involved in these things too, right? Because you need a nurse you can trust and who can
Yeah,
get the patient's trust.
yeah.
And I maybe you're going to talk about this, Beth, but I keep thinking about the fact that he poured acid on her fucking face before he buried her. And
Mhm.
I know that, like, maybe, I mean, it's operating on a couple different levels here. Like, yeah, sure, maybe he wanted to obscure her face, but also there's just something really vicious about that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is like something that you hear about, these like acid attacks in certain parts of the world that have to do with like jealous husbands or brothers or whatever. And there's just like this like he's trying to erase her,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
you know I find it particularly upsetting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they buried her under a laundry room wrapped in oilcloth. That's bad. But like something about the face, just
Yeah.
like, it's so vicious, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we can talk about this more as we go along, but really it's a really morally complicated picture because a woman like Eva probably sought an abortion because she was not married, and um, women at this time period would have to quit their jobs if they got pregnant or if they got married. So she would have lost her source of income. Um,
Yeah, and they probably would have fired her if she was
mhm,
pregnant when she was
mhm,
not married. Setting aside societal expectations for women to be raising children,
right.
that would have been seen as like a moral offense that they would
Yeah.
fire her for.
Yeah. And at the same time, like these doctors who were performing abortions, I think many of them truly meant to help women out of a bad situation. Um, but their methods were very messy and not that safe, as we'll get into more. Um, so it is tempting to demonize all abortion doctors at this
And
period
turn him into
because
the
of the
villain of the story.
horrible
Yeah.
outcomes, but also, um, and this guy was above and beyond. Like he could have turned himself in, whatever. Um, it's just I have a lot of many feelings about all of this. So
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I am approaching it from what is happening today,
yeah.
but also just knowing vaguely the history of how women's health has been treated in this
Mhm.
country,
Mhm.
that yes, we needed abortion providers. We still need abortion providers,
Yeah.
right? But like,
Yeah.
we're the maybe what I'm trying to say is, when you put this shit underground, right? When you make this a black market
Mhm.
situation that you
Mhm.
have to hide, you attract unsavory people to do the job of
Yep.
providing abortions.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm trying to say here, is
Yeah.
that like, if you're going to make it a crime, you're only going to get, or you're more likely to get, criminal types who
Yeah.
are performing
Yeah.
these operations.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is that yes, because this was not legal, there was a full spectrum of practitioners, some of whom were more scrupulous than others, for sure. Um, and even this man, Thompson, may have really wanted to help people, um, but the methods available were not that great, too. Um, so here's kind of an amazing thing. The trial started only a few days after Eva's body was found. There was no like months of pre-trial. They just went
No
straight
backed
into
up
court.
judicial calendars. Yeah.
Thompson was convicted of murder. We'll get into this later, but that is actually quite unusual. Um, Parker, the boyfriend, was not convicted of anything and he went free. Not sure what happened to him after that. So, one of the things, this is happening again in 1910. Abortion law and abortion practices have been controversial and bandied about for about 50 to 60 years at this point. So local newspapers talked to some like more regular practicing physicians in San Francisco. Some of them said they were trying to find ways to get rid of abortion doctors in San Francisco. By this time, openly advertising that you offered abortion services was illegal.
Mhm.
The post office had detectives at work looking at newspapers, um, and said that they found between 30 and 40 cases of an illegal nature each year, and a large number of practitioners were being watched closely and investigated. Um, some of the doctors they talked to felt that the existing laws on abortion were sufficient and just needed to be enforced. Others felt like they needed more more laws on the books. Um, but at the same time, it was very hard to prove that a woman had gone to a doctor to seek an abortion, and it was hard to prove that that doctor performed one. We get into more of that in a minute. Um, one of the problems was you would have the testimony of the woman if she survived, but then she probably wouldn't want to testify because then she would have to admit that she'd gone to seek an abortion. And
Right,
if
which
she
is not
died,
only a crime, but like there's huge social opprobrium for that.
yeah,
It ruins
yeah.
her life, basically.
And if she died, then it was the doctor's word against anybody else's, and he could claim that she came in for any number of reasons. So again, it was very hard to prove. The Eva Swan case is different because they had, the boyfriend who was like, "I know what kind of hospital this is." They had her body, they had all of this evidence, and all of these people willing to testify.
Yeah, they had leverage,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. One thing I wanted to briefly get into is what kinds of birth control were available at this time because,
Oh.
like, in order to avoid an abortion, you either have to not have sex or you have to be using some form of contraception. Um,
Something we probably do need to clarify once again in this day and age.
yeah.
I thought
S-
that birth control was keeping an aspirin between your knees, Beth.
mm.
It's called keep your legs closed, ladies.
Could almost do. I mean, somebody's probably done a whole episode on historical birth control techniques. But the ones that were in use at this time included the rhythm method, which
Oh,
we know
yeah.
is like measuring your fertility throughout the
Girl, they
months.
are bringing that back.
Yeah.
They don't call it that anymore. Cradle Catholics know the rhythm method from, you
Yeah,
know.
it's really worked really well for me so far.
But these trad cath like Peter fucking Thiel is like backing these family planning apps that are essentially, they're telling women, you guys, I'll put some links in the podcast notes because there's a lot of people who have covered this in greater detail.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get into all of it. But they are in this push to have more white women to have babies, and in this
Mhm.
era where
Mhm.
abortion is now illegal in half the country, they are pushing these hormone free methods.
Yeah.
They're telling young
Yeah.
women that hormones are dangerous, and they're telling them to use the fucking rhythm method, right? Ask a Catholic mom from the 80s with 8 kids how that shit works, right?
Another technique was withdrawal, as in the man pulling out before he
Pulling
has a
out.
yeah.
Also, as we all know, real effective, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um there were
You can't see Carolyn's face. Carolyn's face is so red. First of all, she's like a little bit sunburned, okay? But also, she's right now laughing so hard that her face is like turning purple. She looks like fucking RFK Jr. Go on. Another one. I'm just kidding, Caroline. I would never say that about you. Ever. Ever.
there were diaphragms and condoms in this period.
Dude, weren't the condoms reusable back then?
I don't
What?
know.
Okay, sorry, Beth.
I don't know.
Go on, Beth.
Prolonged breastfeeding was used as one method.
Oh,
Doesn't work
also
very
doesn't
well.
fucking work. Ask
No.
any one of us who breastfed, and the doctors were like, "You need to go on the progesterone
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
pill." Yeah.
Um, there were also herbs that had been in use for a long time. Contraceptive sponges existed at this time. I don't know what they were dipping them in, but you
Oh
would get like a natural
yeah.
sea sponge and put it in your vagina.
I don't know
Um,
what they were dipping it in, dude.
Those things lasted for a long
Yeah.
time. They were teaching me that in high
Yes,
school. I
yes, I
mean, in the early
remember
2000s, they were like,
the
here is
sponge.
a contraceptive
yeah.
sponge.
But at least we had like spermicide.
Yeah. Um, women were also in some cases dipping tampons in something. Also, I don't know what that was.
Oh, what were
Um,
they dipping it
I don't
in? I'm
know.
so scared.
Contraception was legal through most of the 19th century, but a social purity movement grew, aimed at outlawing vice in general, prostitution and obscenity in particular. Um, this was the birth of the Comstock Act,
Yeah,
which
baby.
limited, among other things, taught that like advertising contraception was somehow obscene.
Yeah, that was like how it's interstate commerce, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're putting things in the mail, that's how the federal government can get involved.
hmm hmm So contraception was obviously very limited. So if you got pregnant, abortion was one of your choices. Um, there were a number of euphemisms for in advertising if you wanted to get around these laws and
Oh.
continue to practice. Um, so a lot of advertisements would say um, the doctor could handle any female complaint, or they would claim that they were removing somebody's appendix, and that's why they were in there. Or
Oh, casual elective appendix removal.
this last one is my favorite: treating a blockage of the menses. So,
I mean,
like,
it's
they're
not a
like,
lie, is it?
I know, we don't, and they
You're
don't
not
know.
getting
I
a
mean,
period
especially
anymore.
early in a pregnancy, you don't know why the menses have stopped. You don't know why the period has stopped. You're like, well, we're gonna go in there and
Gotta go
see
root
what's
around
going
in
on.
there and see. Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask a question
Of
here
course,
though? Like what was a pregnancy test?
there were no pregnancy. No,
Tons.
I wish I could remember the details. This podcast will kill you had an episode or two about pregnancies and about how the invention of the pregnancy test actually revolutionized everything, but it also um, I think it was relatively recent, and I mean, there were old tests like if you pee on this thing and this thing sprouts, it means you're pregnant, and if this other thing sprouts, it means you're not. None of those were reliable. But yeah, it actually pregnancy tests give women so much more power over their own reproductive choices, but they did not come
Yeah.
along until much after this period. So,
Right. And we know the earlier you intervene to end a pregnancy, the safer it is for the
yeah.
woman as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about the fact this phrase treating a blockage of the menses that you don't know for sure what's causing it, but I mean, humans have known when they're pregnant for hundreds of thousands of years.
I mean, I kind of love it. It's not a lie. So Beth, let me maybe you don't would they look for these ads and then be like, this doctor is advertising, you know, care for the blockage of the menses. Would they like raid those places
hmm
or did they know? Yeah.
Um, I don't know the answer to that specific question, although, yeah, it's really unclear. And it doesn't seem like the police were that involved at that time. Just mainly if somebody died.
Makes sense. Yeah. I'm
um,
withholding comment. Go on, Beth.
yeah, we've already talked a little bit about some of the reasons that women would seek abortion. Again, with Eva Swan, we don't know for sure, but she was pregnant outside of marriage and she probably would have had to quit her job. In fact, married women and mothers could not hold jobs until 1978. I'm going to say that again.
Cool, cool,
If you were
cool.
married or a mom, you could not hold a job until 1978.
And Beth, that's why we want to make America great again.
Hey, Beth here. I wanted to clarify something. Before 1978, when the U.S. added the Pregnancy Act to protections covered by the Civil Rights Act, pregnant people faced workplace discrimination and could be refused accommodations, fired, or passed over for a job. In addition, many countries, including the US, had informal marriage bars that forced women out of the workplace if they got married. That bar ended in the US in 1964 when the Civil Rights Act passed. Okay, now back to the show. um, Another case we'll talk about in the next episode. Um, this woman, she and her husband had a child and she got pregnant again. They did not have the money to have another child. As simple as that. In this era, pregnancy and childbirth were still incredibly risky. Um, Germ theory was not a settled upon thing yet. There was very little in the way of sterilization techniques. Um, and then on top of that, having children and having a lot of children is just exhausting. So there are any number
Yeah,
of
and
reasons women
it's
might not
not
want to
like
have a lot
health.
of children.
Yeah, it ruins your organs and your body, and it's hard on the body.
Yeah. And all that sleep deprivation.
Oh my God. I can't even. I only have two, and like, fuck that.
Yeah. I have one, and
And
that's enough.
that one is still keeping you awake.
Yes. So I did gather up a bunch of articles about different women who um, were written about in the newspapers of the era, and I was going to gather up some of the causes of death because it's not always clear, like how does going to these particular doctors wind up in a fatal situation. Um, Carolina Fleischman, 22, died in the German hospital after an abortion. She had peritonitis, which is inflammation, like an infection of the abdominal cavity, basically. Although, and this again was a jury trial, and they said that we find that abortion was performed by some party or parties unknown to the jury. If I remember in this case, they had the doctor testify, but he claimed that he didn't do anything that would have led to this happening. And again, without witnesses, there's no way to prove that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another woman, Minnie Belmont, died from, quote, hemorrhage to the abdominal cavity, the result of an abortion or miscarriage. So they weren't even sure. Um, Jenny McCowan, 21, died of collapse due to an operation, but the contributing cause was the administration of chloroform. So in her case, something about the chloroform and her health condition combined.
Yeah. It's almost like an anesthesia, like someone who
Yeah,
dies
well,
because they have a reaction to anesthesia versus, yeah.
exactly. This one is a very peculiar case where nobody could be convicted. So there's this woman, they didn't even publish her first name in the newspaper. Her name was, her last name was Van Ornum. So she took some kind of medication that was given to her by this doctor, James Murphy. Um, she came to the emergency hospital in San Francisco. She was having convulsions. Um, it was thought that she had been poisoned. After she died, they looked at the contents of her stomach and they found some like colored liquid, but also they found the fiber of cotton root in her stomach. So, this is something we'll get into in a minute. Cotton roots are actually used to end a pregnancy,
Oh,
but they said in this case it was not enough to have produced death because that can be toxic in high quantities
like toxic to the fetus or to the
to the
mom,
person.
to the woman, to
Yeah,
the person.
yeah.
Okay. So it could either
Um,
induce a miscarriage or it could kill you.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
All right.
dose makes the
Depending on
poison.
the dose. Yeah.
So after she died, the detectives went to the doctor's house, and were investigating and looking around. And the doctor who gave her the medication and the cotton root um, said something to them. He said, "You have found the incriminating evidence." He was placed under arrest. He asked why. And then he said, We'll tell you that down at the station." And then he said, "Excuse me a moment." He turned to one of the bureaus or cabinets in the room. He grabbed something and he opened a bottle and drank from it.
Oh, I thought you were going
And,
to tell me he fought his way out or he like ran and
no.
jumped out the window.
So he drank this bottle of stuff. Um, and he said, "I have fooled you all." He fell to the floor, was having convulsions, and died. So their assumption is that
What?
what he drank was the same stuff that he had given this woman, Miss Van Ornum.
Oh,
So
God.
yeah,
What
it
a
was a
weird
very
fucking story.
I know. Yeah. So he ended his own life rather than face prosecution.
I mean,
Why is this all so
I know.
weird? Like, why can't it just, like, it seems like there is just a very straightforward solution to all
Yeah.
of this. And then this dude is like chugging a bottle
Yeah.
of poison when being
Mhm.
confronted. Like,
Mhm.
what?
well, I feel like that is like a thing they used to do in the old newspapers too. They would like, I'm sure some of this is exaggerated, right? Where they would come
Of
up with these
course.
like death, these proclamations at death. I've seen this more than once in old newspaper
Yeah.
articles, and I'm like, how do we know that, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
have fooled you all. Glug, glug. I mean, that sounds like a fucking vaudeville scene, right? Like, it doesn't sound
I know. I
real.
thought you were going to be like, I fooled you all. I am invisible. And he like tries
Watch
to
me
run
drink
out of
this
the room or
potion.
something. And everyone's like, we can see you.
We can see your
Like,
dead body. I
yes.
see your soul has
That
flown
didn't work.
away. Okay, well, no trial for that guy. So,
No trial for that guy. We're going to now move into more of a big picture history. And I want to actually start with there's a great book by Barbara Ehrenreich and Deirdre English that was written in the 1970s called Witches, Midwives, and Nurses. And it
I
talks
love
about
Barbara
how,
Ehrenreich. R.I.P.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it talks about how women and traditional healers knew how to control fertility for like hundreds of years before doctors became a profession. And they talk specifically about how um, the the physician community did everything they could to like eradicate lay midwives and herbal healers and take over and medicalize pregnancy and childbirth. And one of the first um, quotes that they have in the book is that the doctors were more dangerous and less effective than the midwives.
I mean, they didn't, like famously, doctors did not wash their hands, right?
Yeah,
They would just go down the line. This is where childbed
yeah,
fever comes from, right? They were just not,
yeah,
they didn't even
yeah.
wash their hands, right? Beth, I remember learning about this in law school of all places. Where I had this like very righteous health law teacher who talked about how they use like regulations and the American Medical Association and the doctors to kind of drive the midwives out of practice and make it
Mhm, mhm.
illegal you to be. I mean, I love my obstetrician, don't get me wrong, female by the way. But yeah, I mean, I have heard this. It's not,
Yeah,
I think it's pretty much established knowledge by now. And those were
yeah,
women, so of course, right?
yeah.
Mm.
So if I say Malleus Maleficarum, do you guys know what that is?
I do.
Yeah, tell
Carolyn,
us what it is.
Carolyn, Malleus Maleficarum.
No, I think that is from
It's
Harry
not from
Potter.
Harry
That's
Potter.
all I
It's
got.
not. We don't support that transphobes bullshit on this podcast.
Sorry.
Malleus Maleficarum is the book that they use to prosecute witches, is it not?
Correct. It's a there's a quote in there. No one does more harm to the Catholic Church than midwives.
God
Just
bless him. He's
amazing.
probably right. That's why we do it,
So
asshole.
it's not clear whether the women that were persecuted as witches were lay healers or midwives necessarily. But today there is this mythology that the woman healer on the edge of the village was the one who was accused of witchcraft. And suppression of witches and folk healing was certainly happening in Europe at the time that this book was circulating and during the witch trials. Prior to the development of modern medicine, every culture had herbalists and healers who would know what to do for like a chest cold, a headache, infection, burns, wound healing, etc. This is from witches, midwives, and nurses. They talk about the fact that the healers were primarily women. Meanwhile, the profession of doctors was mostly white men. And so they worked discredit the healers. It may have also been, aside from a gender issue, it may have also been a class issue.
I would say for sure, right? I mean, we talked about that in the episode about the Anatomy Act, right? There was this kind of
Yeah.
class demarcations between like uh barber surgeon people, doctors, and then like surgeons, and then obviously the people who were supplying
Yeah.
them with the fresh bodies.
Mm.
Fresh.
Yeah, the new wave of male doctors. And this happened earlier in Europe than it did in the United States. We'll get into that in a minute. The male doctors were more middle class and upper class, and the village healers maybe were lower middle class, but they were also providing services that anybody could afford. So you might not have to pay anything for that liniment to cure your chest
Or
cold.
you're trading a chicken or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But no, the doctors wanted this to be like a real profession with, and to their credit, like they wanted some standards and ethics and blah, blah, blah. But their way of getting there was just so messy. The rest of this history comes from a great book called Abortion in 19th Century America by James Mohr, Mohr. It's way more nuanced than even I'm going to get into, and I'm going to try to go quickly, but a lot of this stuff is also really important. So buckle up. So here's the thing: in 1800 in the United States, abortion was legal, particularly before quote unquote quickening, which
Mm-hmm.
was, we were talking earlier about, well, we don't know exactly whether somebody's pregnant or not. Like once you start feeling a baby move around, you're relatively certain that there's a baby in there.
You know for sure. Yeah.
So, and because there were no pregnancy tests, this was the first unmistakable sign of pregnancy. This was part of British law, and it came to the US um, along with people coming over here from Britain. It was adopted into the US by British common law. And again, this allowed doctors to treat women for the blockage of menstrual flow because until they removed whatever the blockage was, they couldn't be sure it was caused by pregnancy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Abortion was generally considered safe by the medical standards of the day, and it may have been even safer than childbirth itself, but as we'll see, it was not really all that safe. The first law passed that made abortion before quickening illegal was in 1803 in Britain. So 1800 legal before quickening, 1803 no longer legal. I think there were still some exceptions and things like that, but those kinds of laws did not come to the US until a lot later. Again, going through the newspaper articles that I had um, from California, from San Francisco, some of the local methods included a strong tea of tansy, which is a flower. Enough of it will induce abortion. Again, this is not medical
Yeah,
advice.
don't
Please
try
don't follow
this,
these
you guys.
instructions.
Yeah.
Cotton root, as I mentioned,
Oh,
they were beginning to use surgical instruments to induce abortion. We'll get into that again more in a minute. Um, Another one was carbolic acid, like drinking carbolic acid, because it caused such profound digestive problems that they figured it would also expel a pregnancy.
I wonder if that's what they were putting on the sponges and the tampons and stuff.
It's possible.
Horrifying.
Mohr refers to a book called Domestic Medicine. It listed several methods of quote unquote restoring the flow of menstrual blood. These included bloodletting, hot baths, iron and quinine concoctions, a spoonful of the tincture of black hellebore twice a day in a cup of warm water. Hellebore is a very toxic flower.
As
Um,
I recall, you're growing it, aren't you? Are
yes,
you admitting on
yes,
air?
yes. Uh, not for that reason.
Okay.
Not for that reason.
What about pennyroyal? Did that come up?
It did not really come up. I
Okay.
think that falls into the category of these, these earlier classes of herbs that people have known about for a very long time.
Okay.
But I think once the quasi medical community started getting involved, they were using, carbolic acid and poisonous flowers. Like, so if these first sets of recommendations didn't work, this book, again, Domestic Medicine by William Buchan, suggested violent exercise, lifting heavy weights, reaching overhead too high, jumping, stepping off of something tall, strong blows to the belly, and falls. Like, yeah,
Oh.
this was in a medical text.
Ah. I mean, it's kind of like a thing in culture that women falling down the stairs, that like falling
Yeah,
down the
yeah,
stairs would
yeah.
induce a miscarriage. That people would be pushed down the
Hmm.
stairs, or if they had a miscarriage or an abortion, they would say it was because they fell down the stairs.
Yeah. So there was another book called The Married Lady's Companion. I want to get some of these books. The Married Lady's Companion by Samuel Jennings. He talked about what healthy girls could do when afflicted with what you call a common cold. But here's the thing, taking the cold was a euphemism for missing a period. So he
Oh.
recommended, we're all up in the euphemisms. He recommended bloodletting from the feet, hot baths, or doses of calomel and another ingredient called aloes. And we'll get back to that in a second. Calomel is mercury chloride. It was used as a but it frequently caused mercury poisoning. It also caused vomiting and diarrhea.
Yeah, I think mercury was used to treat syphilis too, wasn't it?
Mhm. Mhm. That sounds right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what aloes means here. I don't know if it means the plant or something else. Email us, show@deadreckoningpodcast.com if you know what that means. Likewise, hellebore and the others were ingested on the theory that violent disruption of the lower digestive tract might cause the uterus to also empty its contents. And I did note that, like, I had a home birth, I had a midwife, and if you were well past your due date, they would start giving you castor oil for the same idea, but castor oil doesn't, it's not a poison. It just sort of like totally messes up your digestive system. It starts flushing everything out. So,
Also, let's just make this side note here that men were not digesting any of these
mm-mm,
things as a contraceptive,
mm-mm.
I mean, obviously they were not carrying babies, but like what's striking me is that I'm listening to you tell me all of this crazy stuff
Yeah,
that women were taken or
yeah,
being prescribed,
yeah.
but it was just women doing that.
Yep. And it was men offering the
Awesome.
advice. Men
Yeah,
offering the
it's
advice.
almost like an experiment. Yeah.
So, one of the most common methods of trying to induce abortion was a product called Savin. It was made from extracting oil from juniper bushes. Juniper extract was probably also the most commonly used folk method of abortion in the 19th century. I see this all the time in like historical films and things. It's like women drinking a lot of gin to induce abortion. Courtney is just holding up. We recently put together these little packets of herbs that are meant to prevent the plague.
That's right, you
Go back to our
guys.
plague episode for that. But one of the ingredients that I put in there was juniper berries. So,
So we had to warn people not to drink it. Yeah. don't don't make tea out of
friend
this.
of the pod, juniper. Still a few more methods here: walking, horseback riding, running electricity through the thighs,
No!
douching with strong brandy or hot water, vinegar, wine, or brine.
Brine. Oh,
Don't do any
dude,
of these.
don't do don't do any of this. Drink the wine. Don't put it up your vag.
Of the period of patent medicine and snake oil salesmen, there was people were selling different potions. There was one that included myrrh, aloes, liquor, sugar, vinegar, iron dust, ivy, and Virginia or Seneca snake root. That doesn't sound like a good time.
No, snake root.
And we all wonder about inherited trauma. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder where it really comes from.
That's
You
snake
know,
root.
Yeah.
That's the
just a
DNA. Yeah.
just a quick douche of hot brandy that'll just keep your
Just
lineage just
just put everything
tight.
in a pot and drink it. What could happen?
Drink it or set it up your parts.
Um,
Yeah.
and then the last note is like they were starting to move from this sort of taking something internally to using instruments. Doctors of the era already knew ways of making the cervix to dilate because they were like helping in childbirth.
Delivering babies. Yeah.
Yeah, they knew that dilating the cervix would cause uterine contractions. They also knew that rupturing the amniotic sac would induce contractions. So some of these methods were already being used also to induce abortion. And I think we have a case coming up next time that we'll get into that a little bit
Well,
more.
that's also kind of dangerous because once you start something like that, I mean, I think a lot of people who have been pregnant know this. There's a timeline, right? Once you rupture the amniotic
Hmm.
sac, you have about 12 hours or something, and then
Yeah,
infection sets
yeah,
in. So imagine you're doing
yeah,
this and you don't miscarry. Then things get
yeah.
really, really dangerous for everyone, right?
Yeah, that may very likely have been what happened to Eva Swan because like I said, they said that the operation was unsuccessful, but she still
Yeah.
died probably of an infection.
Sepsis, yeah. Or she hemorrhaged. Yeah.
S-
We're doctors now, by the
Yeah.
way. Just kidding.
And and 1910 penicillin was not readily available yet. So,
Oh, yeah. I mean, not till like the
mhm.
1940s, right? Oh.
So yeah, this is a time when abortion is legal in many ways, but the methods are not very safe. And this is like a constantly shifting field, the legality of it versus the safety of it. Between the 1920s and 1940s, about 10 states made certain kinds of abortions explicitly illegal. The first was Connecticut, but it was, as we can understand, it was aimed more at protecting women from being
Yeah. And
poisoned
from dubious
because a
practitioners.
lot of these things were
Yeah.
poisonous.
Hmm.
Yeah. The Connecticut law didn't affect abortions by mechanical or surgical methods. So it was just really, giving them hellebore or
Carbolic
whatever.
acid. Hmm.
And again, through the 19th century, a lot of the restrictions were designed to protect women from dangerous medical treatments. Now, earlier I said that they thought abortion was safe during this time period, but these laws being designed to protect women from abortion suggests that it wasn't all that safe. And as we've seen, it wasn't all that safe.
Right. I mean, probably a lot of medicine wasn't all that safe either at that time. Right. I mean, I guess you had
Mm-mm,
germ theory by then,
mm-mm.
but you didn't have penicillin.
Yeah. Parallel to all of this is the fact that in the US, the medical field was changing. Doctors wanted to be, like well educated, practicing the latest techniques. And they wanted to make sure that people who are practicing as doctors had come out of like a reputable college institution. In 1800, two-thirds of the doctors in the city of Philadelphia were not members of the local College of Physicians and had not graduated from any medical school of any kind. And then, even among doctors who'd had gotten a degree in medicine, their abilities varied quite widely. So, the graduates of medical colleges wanted to create a way to like separate themselves from the others. They noted that the Hippocratic Oath itself sort of outlaws abortion, like trying not to harm anybody. So they started to find these ways to create a divide between themselves and people practicing abortion in the US. And this is one of the reasons that abortion laws changed over the course of the 19th century. It wasn't originally out of morality at all. It was the doctors wanting to sort of like have control over the medical profession. But they also had this dilemma because they recognized that fetuses began developing at conception, not just from quickening, but the qualified doctors also were afraid that they would lose patients to doctors who would perform abortions because people wanted them. Another thing that was going on in about the 1840s is that abortion became more commercialized. So, despite the efforts of these quote unquote regular doctors, there were ads in the newspaper. Um, and another thing that was going on at this time is that more white married Protestant women of middle and upper classes wanted to either put off having children or not have any more children after a certain number. So you have these people advertising services and these women who want the services. Prior to 1840, there may have been one abortion for every 25 or 30 live births. And by the 1850s, there was maybe one abortion for every 5 or 6 live births. So that's a big increase.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Also, if we look at, I don't know if these numbers are going to work, but childbearing went down as abortion became more available and more commercialized. Here's just one statistic. In 1800, the average woman had 7 children. And by 1900, it was an average of 3.5 children. So the child rate was in half within a century, partly due to the availability.
You also have like the industrial revolution in there. You have people moving into
Yeah.
like factory jobs and living in cities, and but I'm sure it has to do with birth control and abortion too, right? I mean, if you
Hmm.
give people a
Hmm.
choice, they're not going to choose to have 8 kids, most people, right? Even if just for economic
Right.
reasons, right? You also have the high child mortality rates. I mean, there's a lot.
None
Yeah.
of this is good.
No.
Um, this is before the Comstock Act, so abortion related ads appeared in many newspapers. Doctors wanted to find patients, newspapers needed the ad revenue. Do not send me off on a tangent about what's happened to newspapers with the lack of ad revenue. Um, and also because newspapers were covering high profile abortion trials, it was more present in the public consciousness. I mean, I don't love to say that like media attention causes social ills or whatever, but this is one of those cases where, if you read about 5 of these trials and then you get pregnant, you're like, maybe I should try this, even though the consequences were so
And on
severe.
the other side of that, if these cases keep coming up, that's more that it gives politicians a reason to motivation to pass laws and things that,
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
we don't want to say that politicians pass laws based on like whatever the fuck is currently trending on Twitter, but hey, it's 2025, so we know that's the shit, right? So you have it on both sides, right? It does influence the culture, is what I'm
Hmm.
saying, Beth, and you're a reporter, so you are responsible.
Thanks.
You're welcome. You're
Thanks.
welcome.
So, not all of the abortion doctors were advertising like just flat out. They were using a variety of different euphemisms and things. There were people who were selling like quote, one was called a French renovating pill. I don't French renovating pill.
Renovate your uterus
Um
the
or
French
a
way.
French, yeah. Oh, another one is
No,
French
bebe.
lunar pills. So like I guess making it French makes it sound fancy. Um, and here's something else. Sometimes abortion doctors advertise themselves as astrologers or
Oh,
clairvoyants
hell
instead.
yeah. Hell
So,
yeah.
um,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
yeah, yeah,
Beth, we're getting closer and closer to 2025 here.
I know. The market for pills that could induce abortion exploded between 1840 and 1880. And again, one of the most popular was cotton root. You could go down to your drugstore and buy cotton root. Yeah,
Contraceptive.
Abortifacient.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
And
come from nowhere.
the plantation owners were confiscating cotton
Yeah.
material from people who wanted to. And I mean, they had additional reasons for wanting to control their fertility because any children they had became
Yeah, that's
the
their
property of their
profit.
enslavers,
Yeah.
and they didn't want to
Enslaved.
bring.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's their bottom
Yeah,
yeah,
but
line.
there was like they were like, yeah, cleaning out everybody's pockets to make sure
Oh shit, I didn't
yeah,
know that.
that the baby
exactly.
happened instead of not happening.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um,
USA.
so yeah, the women of the um, enslavement period had this knowledge that they could make use of, and then the enslavers figured it out and tried to circumvent it.
Yeah.
So in the 1850s, we saw a new kind of instrument developed that might work to induce abortion. It was described as an airtight pump that could be used on, quote, the lower body to restore bleeding. Another, another device used a galvanic battery to send electricity from the lower back to the pubic bone or
Oh
into,
no.
or into the vagina. Yeah. If you want to be like mildly electrocuted.
If you want to have a Frankenstein vagina, because
Yeah.
the galvanic stuff, wasn't that the
Yeah.
inspiration for Frankenstein?
It absolutely was.
Frankenstein womb.
Name of our punk band.
So many. Beth, every episode, it's like a new band. If only we had any musical talent between the three of us.
Right.
We'd be
That's
so
why
good.
we're podcasters. Sex education started to become more common in the public schools in the 1850s. And weirdly, some of the doctors thought that this education was a major factor in the sharp increase in abortion rates, which meant that doctors were actually calling for an end to sex education in the schools because girls were getting ideas, I guess.
So much has changed, thank God.
Yeah. 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 We talked about a little bit about this earlier. Even though laws against abortion were on the rise, these cases were still very hard to prove. There were rarely witnesses besides the doctor and the patient. A woman who underwent a successful abortion was unlikely to testify, and a woman who died as a result obviously couldn't testify. Doctors could claim that they didn't know the woman was pregnant or that she only asked for a remedy to get her period flowing again. Women who were injured as the result of an abortion were less likely to be believed in court than the doctor who provided the service. I mean, imagine like court testimony in 1880. This woman says that doctor did this thing and I was injured by it. And the doctor was like, no, I didn't. Like, who are they going to believe? A jury room full of probably dudes.
Yeah, the hooer who got knocked up or the doctor, right?
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, like there was more outcry because married women were seeking abortions after the 1850s, again, to control the number of kids that they had to look after. Anyway, here's some quotes from the Boston Medical Journal. An article described these women as, quote, only desiring to rid themselves of the prospective cares of maternity. Like, how dare you not want to be a mom all the time?
How dare you not want to have 8 kids, bitch?
Yeah.
Get back in the kitchen.
There was another doctor in Michigan who said there was, quote, a widespread determination on the part of many who are married to avoid the labor of caring for and rearing children. Like, again, how dare you not want to do
says the
anything
people
else?
who aren't doing the work, right? Not to mention, and this is kind of like a through line on all this. Those women didn't really have a whole lot of choice in having sex with their husbands back then, right?
No.
That was kind of
Yeah.
it. The solution is not men keep it in your pants because you're going to kill your wife with all these pregnancies. It's like, hey, lady, do your job, do your duty, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cheerfully with a smile, bitch.
There are a couple more quotes here. There were quotes that suggested that women who got abortions were seen as self indulgent because they didn't have the time or inclination to nurse babies. And women were accused of pursuing fast living or pursuing selfish and personal ends. So, like, I guess having a podcast would be selfish and
Treat
indulgent.
yourself. Get an abortion. Yeah.
It was around the 1850s that instead of abortion being seen as unsafe and the laws being there to protect women from poisoning or surgical injury, it started to be painted as a moral evil. And this had to do with this idea that, like, women were not doing their motherly duty. There was a doctor named Edwin Hale who wrote a textbook on abortion. He said that abortions would undermine the very foundations of all domestic morals and reduce marriage to a false and degraded position.
When your wife is not degraded enough. Yeah.
He also said that it was murder to destroy the quote receptacle of a soul at any time during gestation. So not just after quickening. Now we're looking at the whole pregnancy as an
Yeah.
ensouled being that you are murdering.
That now we're getting into like the root of the modern day
Yeah.
evangelical interpretation of
Yeah.
this, which is
Exactly.
new, as you've explained. This is not something that's always been around. Yeah.
Mm-mm. No. And so with this change in approach to how society was viewing abortion, newspapers started again printing sensational stories about abortions, death, and trials against the doctors who performed them. And the New York Times was actually a big part of this. They said it was high time that the attention of the public be directed to the scoundrels who, under the pretense of giving relief, create direct misery upon thoughtless women. So they were completely blaming the doctors for all of this.
Oh, buddy, the New York Times.
Yeah.
I wind me up and watch me go, Beth, because they are, as we all know, doing the same shit with this trans panic stuff right now, where they are blaming the
Hmm.
doctors for
Hmm.
pushing hormones on kids, minors, people under 18 seeking gender affirming care. It's literally the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Some reporters from the New York Times went undercover with a woman claiming to be pregnant, talked over various abortion methods with doctors, and wrote these stories of these conversations. In a 10-year period between 1869 and 1879, the New York Times wrote 70 different cases of criminal abortion and strongly endorsed anti abortion activities of the American Medical Association. Thanks, New York Times.
This is not the first time they've been caught up in a dumb moral panic about people having individual rights. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah. Another thing that happened toward the end of the 19th century is that we in the US had a lot more immigrants from Italy, Germany, and Ireland. So countries with a significant Catholic belief system.
Yeah, a bunch of dirty Catholics. Yeah.
And so the doctors started to team up with the Catholics to, like, create more support for anti abortion laws, which is just wild. I mean,
Tale as old as time, baby. Wait till we fast forward to the part in the 1960s where the evangelicals who don't want to integrate schools team up with the Republican politicians to create a new wedge issue called abortion. Go on, Beth. I'm stealing your thunder.
abortion laws continued to morph between 1860s and 1880s when many states adopted more restrictive abortion measures or outright bans. By 1880, all states had some kind of anti abortion law on the books. Kentucky was the exception where it had been outlawed by the courts instead of by legislators. But many of those laws still had some language around quickening. So, like early pregnancy abortions were still sort of okay.
Right. What we would call like first trimester today, right?
Yeah. In California specifically, the abortion laws changed in 1872. And after that time, it was a crime against any woman rather than any woman with child. And the laws would go after the person who performed the abortion, any of their assistants, and to any woman who voluntarily submitted to an abortion or tried to perform one on herself. So it's much broader than
Oh,
the early laws against, like, just don't poison your patient kind of stuff.
Beth, do you think that was to kind of get around the advertising of like, oh, I wasn't providing an abortion. I was just trying to get her going again?
um, Possibly, although there's still plenty of court cases where the doctors were able to get around it by saying they were doing something else. So
Okay.
um, we'll get into more of that in the next episode, where we're going to look at a series of abortion doctors and how they fared in the legal systems in San Francisco. Still, even with the morality aspect of it, most of the laws were still aimed at protecting women and unborn babies against dangerous medical procedures. And like we talked about, this is still, all of these methods are pretty unsafe, whether it's the suction cup or the galvanic battery or the,
The electrical, electrical chair for the fetus, or
yeah.
more accurately for the vagina. Yeah.
And it was also unsafe just because we didn't have a solid grasp of germ theory and sanitation practices.
Yeah, or reproductive processes, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they thought they knew, but
The interesting thing is, abortion remained illegal till from about the late 19th century into 1973, when Roe v. Wade passed. I shouldn't say passed, but the Supreme
was
Court
ruled.
ruling
Yeah.
came down and made it legal in many parts of the country that wanted to make it legal. So, in this era where abortion remained illegal, the methods were getting safer and safer and safer. So, we have this idea around, oh, they were made illegal because they're not safe. And then we have this more moral element. The procedures get safer, but the moral element takes over. I just find that very interesting. And now we're back to a point where, like, you can get a very safe abortion right now, but because it's illegal, it's not safe for everybody everywhere.
Yes, you're right. And they almost have to pivot to the morality these days because it is so safe. It's in many
Yeah.
cases, in early pregnancy, especially, it's safer than giving birth, right?
Yeah. Even though abortion was illegal, it was still practiced at the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century. And instead of being middle class Protestant women, it was more lower class and immigrant women. And so this brings Margaret Sanger into the discussion because she was pursuing the development of birth control for women, but she said she was trying to help these poor and immigrant women to control the birth rate, but she also was aligned with the eugenics movement. Of course, she
Yeah.
was.
She also was an advocate of the great replacement theory in its earliest forms.
I mean,
They're
they're
just coming here having anchor babies that are now us. That's me.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
I'm a fucking Polish anchor baby. Okay, you hear that, family? Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, uh, there are people on the internet who will argue with you over whether Sanger was a real eugenicist or whether she just aligned with the movement because it helped her gain support for birth control. We are all very grateful for birth control, but also when you align yourself with Nazis, you're kind
Yeah,
of a
man.
Nazi. Anyway,
And it's fine. She's dead. Like, she's not
yeah.
running for office right now. So it's fine to uh, be honest. And
So I, I think this might be from one of her biographies. She said that Sanger wanted to eliminate the number of unfit people in society. And she included in that group people who were insane, syphilitic, paupers, so poor people, morons, feeble minded, mentally and morally deficient persons. I want to clarify that as a quote. It's not me saying those words.
Yeah, we're
Um,
not calling people morons because
and it also, she included quote unquote reckless people who are incapable of restraining themselves from having an excessive number of offspring. Um,
it's like it's almost like I've never heard that before. Are we gonna get into the welfare queen stereotypes now too? Because that's direct offshoot of that bullshit, right? Totally debunked, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I will say, I mean, this is really a topic for another episode, but this brings us back to these crusades against vice that happened in the late Victorian period, and this idea that girls and women had to behave in a morally upstanding way. And that's how we got all of these institutions for wayward girls and women. And I've written about the one in San Francisco known as the Magdalene Asylum. And a lot of the language that got women and girls institutionalized in these places was the idea that if they were interested in sex or if they were queer, they were marked as feeble minded and mentally or morally deficient, and they could be institutionalized. And there were a lot of these institutions that did forced sterilization to keep them from
Mhm.
having morally defective, feeble minded babies.
Yeah, I mean that's Buck v. Bell, right?
Hmm.
That's the Supreme Court case that basically said, yeah, if you're not fit to be reproducing, you don't need to, you know what I mean? They can sterilize you, they can do all these things to you, hold you against your will.
Yeah,
Um, you're not protected from the government.
yeah. Well, and it's interesting, like throughout all of this, the laws have gone back and forth, the doctors have gone back and forth. But it's really the overarching theme is women don't get to decide what they want to do with their bodies. Like whatever they want to do with their bodies is not what society wants them to do. And society wants to tell them, no, you need to do this thing with your body instead, whatever that is. Like on the one hand, you have people going, well, women just are lazy and they don't want to have babies. And then you've got Margaret Sanger going, these people are having too many babies.
Yeah, it's a surprise you can never win. I
Yeah.
was wondering if you were getting into our friend of the pod, Thomas Malthus, to the Malthusian trap.
Not specifically, but there were connections definitely between Sanger and Malthus, which is, I don't know how you could ever say that Sanger was not a eugenicist because she was allied with these people.
Yeah, and the whole idea, again, debunked for any asshole who strayed onto this podcast and didn't know what he was getting into, that like if you let poor people have babies, they'll just like have too many babies, and then those babies will gobble up all the resources, and then there's no check on the amount of poor people, and then we'll all be poor.
Hmm.
Debunked. Okay, this is shit from the 1800s. It's not. It's we're still following the ideas. The root of these ideas goes back to the new poor laws in England, which we talked about in our
Yeah.
Anatomy Act episode.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess at this time it's closer to then, but I'm thinking more about just we still talk about it this way today. Um,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, depending on when this episode comes out, we're looking at a shutdown of SNAP benefits for like millions of people in America, including a lot of children. And the
Yeah.
rhetoric coming out from the people who want to take away food from children
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
that basically, these people shouldn't have had kids because they were too poor and they're drained on the system. It's the same shit.
And at the same time, we have like quiet government movements to try to encourage women to have more babies. Like, what is going on?
I just fucking heard today Jessica Valenti, who's amazing. She writes this column called Abortion Every Day. And she's like in the trenches on this shit every day. I don't know how she does it because it's the most depressing possible work, but she's in it. And she was talking about calling into a hearing in, I want to say West Virginia, I'll put it in the show notes, where a legislator was asking a school board, well, why aren't we including lessons in home economics? I'm sure they call it something different these days, that encourages these girls to stay, these girls, not the boys, the girls, to stay home and raise babies. Because they were talking about a demographic shift in the county, which means that they have a declining student population. That's probably for many reasons. You know, they don't have the best economy out there in that state either. So who knows, people moving away or whatever. But he literally just said, well, why aren't the schools teaching the girls that they need to stay home and have babies? That's the kind of shit that's going on right now that is really, honestly, truly the same stuff you're talking about. From the 1870s.
Yeah, which is why we're talking about it on this podcast.
Which is why these episodes are going to be like 3 fucking hours each. Because Beth can't get 2 words out. Because I got to start screaming about Republican legislators in West Virginia. Deservedly.
Well, that wraps up the first half of this discussion. And as I said...
Speaking of, what did we clock in at?
We'll have to figure that out after the edits for sure. But yeah, next time we will be talking about 3 abortion doctors in San Francisco and how they fared in the legal system and some of the women they worked with. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. This has been very interesting and, like you said, important right now, too.
Yeah. Once I started on this, I could not stop. So thanks for going along with me.
See you next time.
Dead Reckoning, the podcast where death isn't the end of the story. Hosted by Courtney Minnick and Beth Weingardner, produced by Carolyn Kissick and Here Lies a Story, with art design by Dante Silliman. Our music is Act Calm by OTE. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Dead Reckoning on your favorite podcast platform, or email us at show@deadreckoningpodcast.com. You can follow Courtney at Here Lies a Story on Instagram and at Courtney Minnick on Blue Sky, and see more of her work at HereLiesAStory.com. You can follow Beth at Beth Weingardner on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Mastodon, and see more of her work at BethWeingardner.com.